The grand diplomatic hall on the neutral world of Elysia was a marvel of iridescent glass and polished chrome, designed to inspire awe and facilitate harmony. Yet today it hummed with an anxious silence, thick enough to be cut with a knife, radiating from the very center of the chamber where Princess Xylia of the Viridian ascendancy resided. She did not sit on a throne of obvious power, but rather in a sleek, minimalist console that seemed to blend with the very fabric of the hall. Her form, cloaked in robes woven with patterns that appeared to shift and absorb the light, making her presence both undeniable and elusive. The Viridian ascendancy was a civilization whispered about in hushed tones across the known galaxy, ancient beyond comprehension, their technology so far advanced it bordered on magic, their history etched with decisive, sometimes brutal, actions against any perceived threat or insult. They were a power that commanded not just respect, but a deep, ingrained fear. Princess Xylia, the current face of this formidable empire, carried that reputation effortlessly, an aura of quiet immense authority emanating from her that managed to humble even the most boisterous and aggressive ambassadors from species known for their bluster. No diplomat, no negotiator, no military attach from any of the other 100 species gathered dared to approach her directly. Communication flowed through an intimidating phalanx of towering, armored Viridian guards, their faces obscured by featureless visors, their weapons humming with contained energy, making any direct interaction seem like an act of suicidal folly. The ongoing negotiations for the disputed star system of Cathar, a resource-rich frontier that both the Corellian Federation and the Rimward Alliance desperately wanted, had reached a complete standstill, trapped in a diplomatic quagmire where every proposal, every compromise, seemed to evaporate into the princess's serene, unreadable silence. Among the carefully posturing delegates, Captain Eva Rostova, the human envoy, stood out not by her height or flamboyant attire, but by her quiet intensity and the focused stillness of her gaze. Unlike many of the other species, whose fear of the Viridians manifested as stiff, almost robotic formality or a determined avoidance of eye contact with Xylia's dais, Eva felt a growing sense of unease that was more complex than simple terror. It was a profound curiosity mixed with a nagging suspicion that something fundamental was being missed. She had spent her career reading between the lines of alien diplomacy, understanding the subtle nuances of body language that differed wildly across species, and the rigid protocols that often masked deeper intentions. Now, observing Princess Xylia, Eva noticed the layers of meticulous protocol surrounding her, the almost unnaturally perfect posture of Xylia's guards, and the subtle, almost imperceptible way Xylia's eyes occasionally flickered, not at the grand holographic presentations of star charts or resource projections, but at something insignificant, a stray dust motes dancing in a sunbeam, the reflection of the hall lights on a polished floor tile, or even for a fleeting instant at the small, brightly colored pet that one of the G. Alarn delegates kept perched on their shoulder. It was barely a flicker, gone as soon as it appeared, but it was enough. Ava's instincts, honed over years of navigating precarious interstellar relations, screamed that the princess was not merely unapproachable, but perhaps profoundly isolated, and that her serene, almost cold demeanor was a carefully constructed mask. The other delegates, blinded by the Viridian reputation and their own fear, saw only the unyielding power, the impenetrable authority. But Eva sensed a fragility, a hidden tension beneath the seamless facade. She saw the way Xylia's fingers, adorned with simple, elegant rings, would occasionally tap a rhythm on the armrest of her console, a pattern too complex for nervous habit, too precise for boredom. She observed the near absence of any personal interaction even with her own retinue, reinforcing Ava's growing conviction that Princess Xylia was more than just a feared sovereign. She was a paradox, a being of immense power shrouded in an almost impenetrable loneliness. The diplomatic efforts continued to falter, the air growing heavier with the unspoken threat of conflict if no resolution was found, and as the day wore on, Ava's conviction hardened. The key to Cathar, and perhaps to a new understanding with the Viridian ascendancy, lay not in grand speeches or military posturing, but in something far more unconventional, something no one else dared to consider, reaching out to the feared princess as a living, feeling being, despite the terrifying risk. The question that gnawed at Eva was not if she should try, but how she could possibly pierce the layers of fear and protocol that surrounded Princess Xylia. The diplomatic deadlock, thick and unyielding, tightened its grip on the grand hall, each passing moment stretching the fragile peace thinner than a spider's silk. Speaker after speaker from the various galactic delegations had stepped forward, their voices echoing with carefully rehearsed arguments, their holographic projections displaying intricate data and persuasive statistics, all designed to sway the formidable Princess Xylia of the Viridian ascendancy. Yet each attempt met the same impenetrable wall of stoic silence from the princess and her unmoving, impassive guards. Frustration, a volatile gas, began to permeate the air, threatening to ignite into open hostility and shatter the delicate truce that held the Cathar negotiations together. The atmosphere grew heavy, charged with unspoken threats and thinly veiled accusations as the hope for a peaceful resolution dwindled with every unanswered plea. Just as a particularly boisterous delegate from the Gorgon Republic, a hulking reptilian being with a booming voice, began to escalate their demands into a series of thinly veiled threats, their words reverberating through the hushed chamber. With an almost physical force, Captain Eva Rostova made a decision. It was a decision born not of desperation, but of a deep, almost intuitive conviction that the conventional path was leading only to ruin. Her aide, a young, earnest xenolinguist named Lieutenant Chun, hissed a panicked whisper at her side. "Captain, what are you doing? You can't." But Eva, her gaze fixed on the distant, enigmatic figure of Princess Xylia, barely registered his words. She had seen enough of this dance, enough of the fear and the posturing. It was time for something different, something utterly human. With the quiet resolve that belied the tremor in her hands, Eva bypassed the official communication channels, ignored the horrified gasps and sudden, shocked silence that rippled through the assembled delegates. Her boots, usually so silent on the polished floor, seemed to echo with each deliberate step as she began to walk directly towards Princess Xylia's heavily guarded dais. The distance felt immense, each meter a perilous journey across a chasm of galactic fear and ancient protocol. As she drew closer, the towering Viridian guards, previously as still as ancient statues, shifted almost imperceptibly, their armored forms turning to face her, the low, ominous hum of their energy weapons growing louder, a subtle warning that vibrated in the very air around her. Their visors, featureless and black, offered no hint of expression, but Eva felt their collective gaze, cold and unwavering, fixed upon her. Yet she didn't falter, her pace steady, her eyes never leaving the figure of the princess. She didn't offer a formal greeting, didn't launch into a diplomatic statement, didn't attempt to justify her unprecedented approach. Instead, she stopped a respectful distance away, just outside the immediate perimeter of the guards, her hands moving with slow, deliberate movements. From a small pouch at her belt, she carefully unwrapped a miniature, perfectly sculpted wooden bird, a tiny sparrow carved from a piece of earth oak, its wings spread as if in mid-flight, its surface smooth and warm from her touch. It was a simple object, a personal memento, utterly devoid of any political significance or material value in this grand setting. She held it out, her arm extended, not as a bribe, not as an official gift from the Terran Federation, but as a silent, deeply personal gesture. Her voice, clear but soft, carried across the suddenly vast silence of the hall, a stark contrast to the booming threats that had preceded it. "Princess Zalia," Eva began, her tone devoid of fear or subservience, yet brimming with a genuine, heartfelt sincerity, "this is a symbol of song and freedom from my world. It represents the simple joy of flight, the beauty of a melody carried on the wind." She paused, letting the silence hang, letting the weight of her unconventional offering settle upon the stunned audience. "We humans," she continued, her gaze unwavering, meeting the unreadable depths of Xylia's shadowed form, sometimes find comfort in small, beautiful things when the weight of the galaxy feels heavy, when the burdens of leadership feel overwhelming. The hall fell into an absolute, profound silence, every eye, every sensor, every thought fixed on the scene unfolding before them. The other delegates held their breaths, racing for the inevitable Viridian wrath, for the swift, decisive action that history dictated would follow such a breach of protocol. But Princess Xylia, for the very first time since the negotiations began, turned her head fully towards Eva. Her posture, previously rigid and formal, seemed to soften by an almost imperceptible degree. Her expression remained unreadable, shrouded in the shifting patterns of her robes, yet her focus was undeniably, intensely, fixed upon the small wooden bird in Ava's outstretched hand, and upon Ava herself. The air thrummed with an unspoken question, a profound uncertainty that held the entire chamber captive, as the fate of the negotiations, and perhaps the future of galactic peace, hung precariously on the princess's next unfathomable move. Tense eternity stretched, thick and suffocating, within the grand diplomatic hall. The small wooden bird held out between Captain Eva Rostova's steady hand and the unyielding, shadowed presence of Princess Xylia. Every eye in the vast chamber was fixed on the scene, every breath held, every alien sensor straining to detect the slightest shift in the formidable Viridian princess. The silence was so profound it seemed to absorb all sound, amplifying the nervous thrum of the Viridian Guard's weapons and the frantic beat of Ava's own heart. The moment hung, suspended, a fragile bridge over an abyss of galactic uncertainty. Then, to the utter astonishment of every being present, a ripple of disbelief spreading through the diverse delegations. One of Zalia's towering guards, previously an immovable sentinel of stone and metal, stirred. With a hesitant, almost confused gesture that seemed utterly out of place for such a disciplined warrior, he stepped forward, his movements slow and deliberate, as if unsure of his own actions. He reached out, not with aggression, but with a surprising gentleness, and took the small, intricately carved wooden bird from Ava's outstretched hand. The guard then turned, his featureless visor still unreadable, and presented the humble offering to Princess Xylia. The princess's hand, adorned with simple, elegant rings that seemed to shimmer with an inner light, reached out and accepted the carving. Her fingers, long and slender, brushed the smooth, warm wood. For a fleeting, almost imperceptible moment, a flicker not of joy nor anger, but perhaps of profound curiosity or a distant, almost forgotten wistfulness crossed her otherwise serene, unreadable features. It was gone as quickly as it appeared, a ghost of an emotion on a face that had shown none for days. She said nothing aloud, no words escaping her lips, but then a faint, almost subliminal melodic hum, a sound unheard by most of the other species, resonated briefly from her direction, a low, resonant tone that seemed to vibrate in the very air. Later, through the official, still stunned channels of the Viridian interpreter, it was confirmed it was a very ancient Viridian expression, rarely used outside of their most private ceremonial spaces, signifying a mild, yet profound, intrigue, a quiet acknowledgment of something truly unexpected. This small, unexpected opening, this almost imperceptible crack in the princess's formidable facade, was all Eva Rostova needed. Over the next few days, as the formal diplomatic proceedings continued their slow, grinding pace, Eva continued her profoundly unconventional approach. She didn't press for immediate answers regarding Cathar, nor did she attempt to force the princess into direct negotiation. Instead, she sought out ways to genuinely engage with Xylia, not merely as a political entity, the unapproachable sovereign of a terrifying empire, but as an individual, a fellow being carrying immense burdens. During breaks in the sessions, or even during moments when other delegates were presenting, Ava would subtly shift her focus. She shared stories of Earth's vibrant art and music, describing the intricate melodies of human symphonies, the emotional depth of ancient poetry, and the breathtaking beauty of natural landscapes. She spoke of humanity's struggles and triumphs, its capacity for both great folly and profound compassion. She asked, carefully and respectfully, about Viridian culture, probing gently into their history, their philosophy, their art, always careful to avoid any topic that might be perceived as intrusive or challenging. One afternoon, during a particularly long and tense session, Eva even offered a simple, human-made beverage, a small, steaming cup of spiced tea, its fragrant aroma a stark contrast to the sterile air of the hall. She placed it on a small, unoccupied table near Xylia's dais, a silent offering without expectation. The princess did not immediately acknowledge it, but later Eva noticed the cup was empty. Slowly, meticulously, with the patience of a sculptor chipping away at granite, the formidable ancient facade around Princess Xylia began to show hairline cracks, almost imperceptible to anyone but Eva, whose human empathy allowed her to perceive the subtle shifts. Eva noticed the subtle tension that would sometimes gather in Xylia's shoulders when diplomatic pressure mounted, a fleeting stiffness that betrayed the immense weight she carried. She observed the way Xylia's gaze, when she thought no one was watching, would occasionally linger on the holographic images of open starfields, projected as part of a presentation, a longing that seemed to transcend the political boundaries of the dispute. There was a subtle softening around her eyes, a minute relaxation of her jaw, when Eva spoke of shared human experiences, of the universal search for meaning or beauty. It became increasingly clear to Eva that Princess Xylia carried an immense, almost crushing burden, not just of leadership and the future of her ancient species, but of the very weight of their isolated existence, their long history of self-imposed detachment from the rest of the galaxy, beneath the terrifying power and the unyielding authority. Eva began to perceive a profound loneliness, a silent craving for a connection that the strictures of Viridian tradition and the fear of other species had long forbidden. The suspense now lay not in whether Xylia would react, but how she would react, and whether this fragile, nascent connection could truly bridge the chasm between two vastly different civilizations, or if the ancient fears would ultimately prevail. The shared moments of quiet understanding, subtle glances and unspoken connections between Captain Eva Rostova and Princess Xylia had, against all odds, culminated in a seismic breakthrough, a ripple that would soon become a wave across the galactic stage. The diplomatic proceedings had reached their most volatile point. The air in the grand hall was thick with tension, palpable enough to choke, as the negotiations for the Cathar star system teetered on the brink of complete collapse. Threats, barely veiled, were exchanged between the Corellian Federation and the Rimward Alliance, their patience worn thin by the Viridian Ascendancy's unwavering silence and what they perceived as arrogant intransigence. The fear of open conflict, a war that could engulf entire sectors, hung heavy, a dark cloud threatening to burst. Just as the lead Corellian delegate, a stern, unyielding figure, was about to issue a final, desperate ultimatum, his voice rising to a furious crescendo, Princess Xylia, in a move that was utterly unprecedented in the millennia-long history of Viridian diplomatic engagement, stirred. A hush deeper and more profound than any before fell over the hall as she slowly, deliberately rose from her console. Her robes, usually absorbing light, seemed to shimmer with a newfound intensity, drawing every eye. Her voice, when it came, was not the cold, unreadable tone of a distant sovereign, but resonated with a new, almost weary depth, carrying a profound weight that silenced every whisper, every nervous cough. She didn't just state her position on Cathar. She did something far more revolutionary. She began to explain. She spoke of the ancient fears that had shaped the Viridian Ascendancy, fears born of past galactic conflicts and betrayals that had nearly extinguished their civilization. She articulated the deep-seated protective instincts that drove their seemingly aggressive isolationist stances, revealing the vulnerability beneath the power. She spoke of the immense burden of leadership, a responsibility that had been passed down through countless generations, a solitary path walked by her ancestors and now by her. The weight of her species' survival, she conveyed, rested solely on her shoulders, demanding a vigilance that often appeared as coldness, And then, to the utter shock of everyone present, she spoke, surprisingly, of the human captain, Eva Rostova. It was the unconventional sincerity. Xylia's voice echoed with a newfound clarity. The quiet persistence of Captain Rostova that showed me a path beyond the entrenched fear, beyond the ancient protocols that have long bound my people. She described the small wooden bird, the shared stories, the simple tea, not as trivialities, but as profound acts of genuine connection that had pierced through the layers of her isolation. She admitted that Ava's approach had offered her a glimpse of a different way forward, a possibility of trust where only suspicion had existed. Inspired by Xylia's unprecedented candor, by her raw, unexpected vulnerability, and witnessing the tangible, almost miraculous shift in the feared princess, the other species in the hall began to reassess their own deeply held positions. The Gorgon Republic, known for its aggressive posturing, lowered its weapons, their delegates exchanging glances of stunned realization. The Karelian Federation and the Rimward Alliance, locked in their bitter dispute, suddenly saw the Cathar system not just as a prize, but as a potential bridge, an opportunity for a new kind of cooperation. Ava's act of courage, her simple, unwavering empathy, had not only melted Xylia's icy exterior, but had inadvertently, yet powerfully, paved the way for a more collaborative, more hopeful future for the entire galaxy. The atmosphere in the hall transformed from one of impending conflict to one of cautious optimism, then to genuine collaboration. The disputed star system of Cathar, once a flashpoint for war, was eventually resolved with a landmark treaty, a testament to the power of understanding. The agreement established joint protectorates, ensuring shared access to resources, and even more significantly, initiated cultural exchange programs, a concept previously unthinkable with the reclusive Viridians. This new era, born from a single act of human kindness, marked a profound shift in galactic diplomacy. Humanity, once a relative newcomer on the vast galactic stage, often underestimated or viewed with a mixture of curiosity and mild amusement, earned a new, profound respect. They were recognized not for their military might, which was considerable, but for their unique and often baffling capacity to bridge divides with compassion, to see beyond the surface, and to connect on a deeply personal level. Eva Rostova, though she would never seek the limelight, became a quiet legend, her name whispered in diplomatic circles as the human who dared to reach out. The incident with Princess Xylia, the transformation of a feared sovereign into a reluctant ally, proved to the galaxy that sometimes the greatest strength lies not in the largest fleets or the most advanced weaponry, but in the simple, profound act of reaching out, of offering a hand, and of understanding that even the most formidable beings might carry the heaviest burdens, craving a connection they dare not seek. It was a new dawn, not just for Cathar, but for galactic relations, all sparked by one human's unwavering belief and empathy.